There's an old Jewish proverb that says, "No one is as deaf as the one who refuses to listen." No one is unable to hear like the person who refuses to listen. How are you at listening? If you had to grade yourself 1 to 10, how are you at listening? I don't know about you, but I am often not a great listener. It seems like it happens all the time that I'll come home from work or come home from a meeting and I'll interact with a member of my family, my wife or my daughters or one of my sons who is in trouble, in conflict and going through something, maybe a moment of panic or frustration. And I'll see this, I'll notice it, and I'll say, "Hey, what's wrong?" And they'll start to share said conflict, share said frustration. And I'm really quick to offer advice or prescriptions. And I'll hear this phrase often: "Dad, I just want you to listen." "Brent, I just want you to listen. I don't need you to talk right now. I just need you to listen." Culturally, we aren't great at listening, are we? We aren't great at listening. We are great at posting our opinions. We are great at posts and tweets and stances and protests and offering our defenses and offering our justifications and filling time and space with all kinds of noise and clutter. But we're not super great at listening, are we? When my daughter comes and says to me, I've had a bad day. Man, I can hear it. I think we're all good at really hearing everybody else and hearing all the noise. When she says, "I've had a bad day," I hear that. But what she's wanting from me when she says, "Dad, I want you to listen," is she doesn't want a prescription. She doesn't want a, "Hey, don't worry about it," or "Just shake it off," or just get over it. She wants me to listen, to lean in, to understand, to receive, to feel. When my wife comes to me and she says, "Brent, you've hurt my feelings," she doesn't want me to offer a quick defense or a quick opinion or a quick argument or a quick justification of why I was late or why I said the thing or why my facial expression. She wants me to sit. She wants me to listen. She wants me to understand. And even though I hear what's happening, she wants me to listen. I just want you to listen. How good of a listener are you? We see that all throughout Scripture, God is the God who listens. God is a listener. In the beginning, in the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve, He walks and He calls out their name and He desires to hear their voice. We see that as the nation of Israel is taken captive by the Egyptians, Exodus 3 says, "I have seen their misery, I have heard their cries, and I am concerned and I am moved." He doesn't just hear, but He listens and He is moved to a place of understanding. When Elijah stands on a hill surrounded by his enemies, and he says, "God, help, will you answer me?" God hears his cry, He listens, He understands, and He moves and He responds. See, we see that God is eager to listen, eager to hear, but eager to listen, to understand, and to respond. He says, "Bring your worries, your fears, your anxieties to me because I care." David writes in the Psalm 65, he says, "You are the God who hears, who listens to our prayers. To you we all come." God is the God who listens. And we don't see this any clearer than in the person of Jesus. See, and we see this is what love does, because this is what God does. We see that love is God in the flesh, wrapped up in Jesus. 1 John says, "We know what love is by this, that Jesus came and gave Himself up for us, laid down His life for us." And we see that Jesus was a lavish, was an extravagant, was an extra listener. We see Jesus constantly listening, not just hearing. He had the ability to hear, but He had this unique ability to listen, to understand, and to perceive what was happening, even feel, whether it be the woman at the well who He sits down with. He listens to her story and he takes it all in and He speaks directly to her need and to her heart. He listens, He understands, He perceives, He feels, and He's able to sit with her and listen. Whether it be the man born blind who runs up to Jesus, belligerent, like excited, nervous, anxious, and Jesus says, what is it that you want from me? And Jesus has the ability to stop and to listen and to understand and to empathize and to touch that place, to touch that need in the blind man's life. And He heals the blind. Whether it be religious leaders who are grumbling in the corner, Jesus hears their grumbling but listens and understands their criticism and speaks directly to the criticism, we see that love listens. This is what love does. We see it in the very character and the very nature of who God is from the beginning of time, and we see it fully on display in Jesus, that love listens. Listening leads to understanding, and understanding leads to this place of empathy, leads to the ability to empathize with other people and actually respond appropriately, not offer prescriptions or defenses or justifications or arguments or just quick fixes, but to empathize. Brené Brown is a shame researcher and an expert on vulnerability, and she has this incredible TED Talk that's kind of been put into a unique video format on the difference between empathy and sympathy, or empathy and pity. And I think it paints a picture, a powerful picture of the difference between listening and hearing. So let's check this video out together.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, you can climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. Yeah. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
I love that video, and I love the line where the bear stands next to the fox and says, I don't even know what to say right now, but I'm just so glad you told me. And they sat down next to each other, and one hand was put on the shoulder of another. And I just feel like that's a powerful example of empathy. And empathy starts with listening. Empathy starts with listening, and we see that fully on display in the character and nature of God and fully on display in Jesus. And then we see followers of Jesus pick this up. We see that James writes, make sure you are quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Make sure that listening is your first priority. We see Proverbs that say, the way of the fool seems right to them, but the wise listen. And we see 1 Corinthians 13, verse 4, Paul writes, love is patient. Now that doesn't seem like listening, but that word patient means to long suffer alongside someone, to bear one another's troubles, to have the ability to listen for a long time, to seek to understand, to seek to feel, to seek to empathize. We see that this is what love does. Love listens.